Hello and welcome into this week's Weekly Coaches Report here with head football coach, Coach Joe Smith. Coach, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you.
So Cats coming off a tough loss a couple weeks ago against Redlands. What were your thoughts from that game? Especially you guys faced a lot of adversity early, right there from the opening drive. A couple of injuries affected you guys as well. So what were your thoughts?
I think that's pretty accurate. The number one, we knew Redlands was going to be a really good team, and I really feel like they're a very good team. Going into that, we thought their defense was quite physical, and their offensive line was doing a nice job of being physical at the front too. So those two presented some problems, and we had a hard time stopping the run consistently, and certainly we didn't put enough points on the board. So we had some bad breaks. There were some crazy calls that I've never really seen in football before, and we had some injuries, but we did not play well enough.
So what's your message to the group there? You talk about, a couple calls don't go your way, but that's something that can happen in football all the time. So have you guys kind of addressed that here in those last couple of weeks, or is it on to the next one?
I think what we had to address wasn't that, because you can't really control that, but what we can control is certainly our effort towards preparation, towards mental preparation, and not making any mistakes. And we just did not play a clean enough game from a penalty standpoint, from a technique standpoint, and both of those caught up with us.
So you kind of led me right there into my next question. You talk about the penalties as something that's really kind of bothered this group here. Second in the conference in penalties per game. Is that something you've really focused on here in practice? Is that just something that comes as a byproduct of the aggressiveness of, your front four as well as the entire defense? And is that something we expect to change here in the coming weeks?
Well, we were better with the offsides. That certainly has been an area of emphasis. Obviously, we were poor at that the first couple weeks. So, but anytime you are an aggressive defense, yes, you're going to have penalties. If you have zero penalties on defense, you might not be playing hard enough. Quite frankly. So, we have to just really watch the quality of them and the unforced error type penalties. There's some that are just a complete lack of discipline that we need to clean up, and we certainly have addressed those.
So if there is a silver lining to all of this, Whitworth took on Chapman at the same time that the Wildcats took on Redlands, and they lost in that one by a final score of 37-30. Is it a little too early in the season for you to be scoreboard watching? Is that something that you guys do, and does it help at all knowing that you guys are right where you're were exactly with Whitworth?
Well, I mean, that certainly is not how we think at all. But the early two games are really about pride. They're about possibly playoff locations. If you're able to get into the playoffs in terms of seeding and that sort of thing. But the first two games really don't mean anything. It's once conference play that dictates whether your season continues or not. So. We don't watch the scoreboards often,
So the bye week seems to come at just the right time for you guys. You can make those adjustments there and try to get healthier as well with a couple of key injuries. Any updates on how guys are doing? We know Chris Adamo was out for that week 2 matchup, and then more importantly too, well maybe not more importantly, but losing starting center Zach Jacobs in that game against Redlands as well.
Yeah, when Zach went down, that was a real blow to our offense in terms of continuity and some of the calls that need to be made, etc. So anytime you lose a leader of an offensive line, that gives you cause for concern. And the added bonus is that they have to snap. So if the snaps are not where they need to be, then that certainly affects your offense's production. So we're working on it, and those guys are all getting healthier.
So that's good to hear. And then, we saw William Bartley step in as that backup center. There were a couple times there where it seemed, he wasn't quite ready, but then slowly worked his way into the game. If Zach is unable to play, will Bartley probably be the guy there as starting center?
Yeah, we've really called on Will to step up his game, and there's been a couple other guys too that are in the mix and certainly are stepping up. But that is all about a question of depth, and the more depth that you have, the less a key injury really hurts your team's performance. And so the greater depth you have, the more injury resistant you are, I guess, in terms of a team. So we're working on that depth.
So the Cats continue a pretty tough starting schedule here. Again, third straight game on the road. If there's any consolation, it's going up against Pacific, who's struggling in their own right. 0-3 to start the season with an average loss of by 20 points. When you come into this matchup, what are your thoughts going against Pacific in what probably is considered a must-win game, is it not?
I think every game's must-win for us. It really is. We're in a must-win. We got to win 7 in a row, and that's certainly what we want, but can't be our focus. And our focus really needs to just be on Pacific, and has been. We're not the team that we want to be right now, and I still see signs of tremendous potential in this year's team, but we're not there yet. So with every week that we practice, we're getting better, and we're developing some of that depth, and we're getting some of that continuity within the offensive line and the receiving core, and our defense is maturing, with every day. So I think the future is bright for this team, but we do need to keep winning games as we're getting better. We can't afford another stumble. So Pacific's dangerous. They always have been at their place. They play hard. They're a tough-nosed program. Should be a good contest.
And there's a couple of really talented players on that Pacific defense, in particular led by sophomore Gage Quinn Reese. He's really involved in just about everything, leading the conference in sacks, tackles for loss, as well as total tackles. When someone's so involved in the defensive game plan, how do you guys go out there and game plan against him?
Well, I think if you do that sometimes too much, you can create problems for your system as well. So there's a fine line of trying to neutralize one player or take care of one player, and you give them too much attention, then everybody else beats you. So, he's a fine player, no question, and we've been working at that.
So, again, finally finishing on a non-football note, well, maybe even still a football note, the Cats opened up a brand new weight room facility here on campus, redoing the old facility, and part of that was through the donors, Jim and Sandra Wright, as well as dedicating it to their grandson, Brandon Olson, who played for you when you were a defensive coordinator here. Just tell us what that project was like and how awesome that is to have donors like that getting involved.
It is awesome. That's a wonderful word for it. I think twofold. One, to have that sort of venue here, and it is a really impressive room, and it's not any bigger, but it sure seems like it. And that certainly was the goal, was to be able to put more students through that at one time, and yet still feel like you're not too crowded. I think that was the number one goal. So it's very practical and as well as nice looking, and that's hard to find that mesh sometimes. But very, very pleased with it. But to have that room is awesome for our school. There's no question it'll help with enrollment. It's a huge recruiting tool for us and for kids to come through, because for so long we haven't had the workout facilities that maybe some other programs have had. So I think from a recruiting standpoint, it's wonderful for Linfield in general. And then also to have the Olson's name on it is awesome for me, because he was such a great player and such a great trainer. So it's just really appropriate to have his name on there. And the Wright family have been probably more generous to Linfield than possibly any other family anymore. So I'm really grateful to them.
Yeah, it's gotten some fantastic reviews already, and really, if you haven't gotten a chance to check it out, please do. But, Coach, thank you so much for taking the time. Linfield will be taking on Pacific at Pacific on Saturday. That game will be at 1 o'clock. We'll have the coverage for you on the Linfield Sports Network at 12:30. But, again, Coach, thank you so much for taking the time, and best of luck this weekend.
You're welcome.